All right, everybody, welcome back. We are diving into Dare to Lead today,
Yes, we are.
and we're going to be talking about the book by Brené Brown.
Yes.
But we're actually looking at a blog post that kind of
Yeah,
summarizes a lot of the ideas in Dare to Lead.
exactly.
And this deep dive is all about trying to figure out, well, what are the key concepts from Brené Brown's work as they're presented in this blog post,
hmm
and ultimately, how can those concepts help us be better leaders?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's so interesting about this blog post right off the bat is it challenges our conventional ideas about leadership.
Yeah.
It says right at the beginning, leadership is not about titles or positions. It's about the willingness to step into the arena.
Ooh, I love that phrase, step into the arena.
Yeah.
What do you think when you hear that?
What makes me think, so often we think about leadership as, something that other people do, right?
Right.
People with, the corner office or the fancy title.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what Brown is getting at here is that leadership is really about a way of being in the world. It's
Yeah.
about taking ownership and responsibility, and it's about showing up.
Yeah. So what would be like a real world example of somebody who's not like a CEO or a politician or, a manager?
Sure.
Like what would be an example of somebody stepping into the arena in their everyday life?
Well, think about like maybe you see something at work that, isn't working, right?
Yeah.
Or a process that could be improved, or even just like, something small, like, the coffee pot's always dirty,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Always.
And instead of just complaining about it, you actually take the initiative to do something about it,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's stepping into the arena. Or, maybe there's like a community issue that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And instead of just sitting on the sidelines, you actually, get involved. You volunteer, you donate,
Yeah.
you speak up at a town hall meeting or something.
Yeah.
Those are all examples of stepping into the arena, even if you don't have a formal leadership title.
I love that. And something that comes up in this blog post that I found really interesting was this idea of rumbling with vulnerability.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one for Brené Brown.
What do you think she means by that?
Wait, I think we often think of vulnerability as like a weakness, right?
Sure, yeah.
You don't want to show your cards, you don't want to let people see you sweat.
Mm-hmm.
But Brown actually argues that vulnerability is a strength,
Really?
especially when it comes to leadership.
Okay. I'm intrigued. How so?
Because when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we open ourselves up to connection,
Yeah.
to empathy,
Mm.
to really building trust with other people. And that's essential for effective leadership.
Yeah.
You're not going to inspire people to follow you if they don't feel like they can trust you and they can relate to you.
That makes sense. And how does this rumbling with vulnerability, how does that actually play out?
So it can look like a lot of different things.
Yeah.
It can look like being willing to have those tough conversations.
Yeah.
The ones that we often avoid because they're uncomfortable or we're afraid of conflict.
I have totally been there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But, sometimes those are the conversations that need to happen in order to move forward.
For sure.
Rumbling with vulnerability can also look like, being willing to ask for help,
Mm-hmm.
admitting that you don't have all the answers.
Oh, that is tough sometimes.
Yeah, it can be really tough, especially if you're in a leadership position.
Yeah.
But, it's so much more powerful to be able to say, hey, I don't know this. Can you help me with this?
Mm-hmm.
Than to try to pretend that you have it all figured out.
Right. Yeah.
And it can also look like being open to feedback,
Oh, yeah.
even when it's critical.
That is so tough
Yeah.
to not get defensive.
It is really tough, but it's so important because, if we're not open to feedback, then we're not going to grow. We're not going to learn, and we're not going to be able to improve as leaders.
Right. And to create that kind of environment where people feel safe to be vulnerable, she talks about building brave spaces.
Yes.
What do you think are some of the key elements of a brave space?
Well, I think it starts with setting the tone. As a leader, you have to model that vulnerability yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be willing to share your own struggles and your own mistakes.
Okay.
You have to create a culture where it's okay to not be perfect.
Yeah.
And I think it's also really important to listen,
Mm-hmm.
really listen to people without judgment,
Yeah.
and to create a space where people feel like they can share their ideas and their perspectives.
Absolutely. And I think that ties into the next point that this blog post makes about living your values.
Yes.
You can talk all day long about, being a courageous leader or whatever.
Right.
But if your actions don't align with your words, people are going to see right through it.
Exactly. Authenticity is so important in leadership because it builds trust and credibility. You know,
Yeah.
if you say one thing and then do another, people are going to lose faith in you.
Yeah. And it's not even necessarily about being like intentionally hypocritical.
Right.
It's just sometimes like we don't even realize
Yeah.
that there's a disconnect.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's so important to be really intentional about our values.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to really think about what's important to us and then to make sure that our actions are reflecting those values.
Yeah. And that's not always easy, right?
No, it's not always easy.
Especially when you're in a leadership position.
Right.
There's a lot of pressure to make decisions that might not always align with your personal value.
Absolutely. And I think that's where that rumbling with vulnerability piece comes back in.
Okay.
Because sometimes you have to be willing to say, you know what? This decision doesn't feel right to me. I need to step back and really think about this, or I need to talk to some other people and get their perspective.
So if somebody is listening to this and they're thinking, okay, this is all great,
Yeah.
how do I actually put this into practice?
Right.
Like what's one small step that they could take this week to start being a more daring leader?
That's a great question. I think a good place to start is to just think about one area in your life where you're currently playing it safe.
Okay.
Where you're holding back from stepping into the arena.
So maybe like a work project.
Yeah, so exactly. Or maybe it's in your personal relationships.
Okay.
Or even just in your own self-development.
Mm-hmm.
And then ask yourself, what's one small step that I can take this week to move into that space with more courage?
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be a big dramatic thing. It could be something as simple as, speaking up in a meeting when you normally wouldn't. Or, having that difficult conversation that you've been putting off.
Yeah.
Or even just taking some time for yourself to reflect on your values.
I love that. Just one small step.
Yeah.
So much of Brené Brown's work is about like small little changes that can make a big difference.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into Dare to Lead.
It was my pleasure.
And all of you listening out there, we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Keep on leading with courage and heart.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.